Let's take a look at the world of robotics and artificial intelligence, particularly from the point of view of ethical and legal challenges that this new world is presenting to us, both in business and for ourselves, and of course for policymakers and government. For a long time, people have been fascinated by the idea of developing a robot. In the 18th century, we find things like this picture of the Vaucanson duck. This is an 18th century quacking automaton. It quacked, it took food in, it put food out, and it walked around in a very realistic fashion. More recently, the very word robot comes into play in the early 20th century in a play by a Czech writer, Karel Čapek. It was called RUR, Rossum's Universal Robots. And you'll see in the picture on the right-hand side some figures who are basically human robots. Do they have the ability to think? Yes. Move? Yes. Can they experience emotions and love? Well, that's the whole issue that the play raised back in the 1920s. Going back a little bit earlier, there is the legend of the golem, the idea of being able to create a human-like artificial person. On the right-hand side here, you'll see Frankenstein's monster. This is Mary Shelley's vision of the 19th century, during which time electricity is beginning to be developed. People thought they could reanimate corpses, and the next stage might be to actually design a human. And we know from the story, this particular wretched-looking individual had a pretty unpleasant experience of life and relationships. Well, then we come up to the next slide, the 20th century representation of robots in films, for example. On the left, you've got Robbie the robot from the 1950s. Looks pretty clunky, but was able to talk, walk, make decisions, and hurt people. On the right, a more amusing version of the robot in films, Johnny from Five Alive, and he had a sense of humor. He has little wheels, as you can see, to move around. Again, this idea of the robot that sort of looks human, but not too much. Here's another version of the human-robot interaction, the cyborg presentation. Here you see somebody who's part human, part machine, and obviously pretty deadly in terms of their ability to hurt people and raising all sorts of questions about the bad uses of robots as opposed to the good uses. And just to remind us of how realistic a robot could look today, here's the skin covering what is obviously a machine in a more modern robot presentation. So we're pretty familiar with using robots today. You'll see here a couple of examples. On the right there is using robots for food preparation. These are static tasks, something that you can control, you can unplug, a specific replacement of a human function in a work situation. On the left is Spot, the robot. Can be sent into dangerous situations where maybe there is gas or other threatening situations, terrorism, perhaps bombs. It doesn't have a head, but it does have a camera on the front of it. And it can move pretty rapidly. So robots come in many forms. They're basically replacing and replicating human skills. So more robots will mean fewer jobs, more unemployment, and raising ethical questions about ought we to continue providing so many of these replacement machines. In our next video, we'll be considering other applications of robotics and AI, but what's a transgenic bunny got to do with all this? A bunny that glows in the dark? Watch the next video.